Okay, so you guys really did like my first Thunderbolt video, and I kind of want to go ahead and make a few more videos to kind of see where we can go with this actual coverage of the Thunderbolts. Starting off with issue number 4 for today's video. Now, for me personally, issue number 4 really does make that statement that when it came to Marvel in the late 1990s, they knew they had something here. And let me explain. Without re-explaining the whole idea of what happened in the late 1990s, here's a short version. For Marvel, they were struggling. And so with them struggling, what they did was they kind of put their books that were struggling into a different reality. So like the Avengers, Fantastic Four, they were pushed into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so with those heroes no longer in the main Marvel universe, it left the door open for a new team to come in. Hence the idea of the Thunderbolts. Now, the reason why I'm saying issue number 4 is really important because it's the idea of this team getting a new team member. But the thing is, she is an innocent character. And the reason why I'm saying that because in our first video, we have learned that the Thunderbolts are actually the Masters of Evil. Now, the Masters of Evil go way back because they were different characters, different villains over the years in Marvel Comics who had came together to make this team. But right now, they are pretending to be heroes. And the reason why, because with the Avengers no longer around, the door is open for a new team to step in. But also the idea that you have the public, the government, basically be on their side. But once you do have the public, the government, let their guard down, then the Thunderbolts, or the Masters of Evil, can then swoop in and get whatever they want. But the problem is right now, they have this new character. And her name is Haley Takahama, and we met her in our first video when it came to the Thunderbolts that picked up right after the events of Onslaught. As we all know, it was Charles Xavier gone bad and he wrecked New York. Now, with the wrecking New York, you had a lot of people lose different family members, especially kids when it came to their parents. And so for Haley, she was a child who lost her parents. Now, when it came to the Onslaught event had a hard time saying that. Like I said earlier, it did wreck New York, but you didn't have this group of characters known as the Rat Pack go to different areas that were hit by Onslaught, that were left behind by people who could no longer live there. And so with folks running away, they had left things behind in their buildings that got destroyed. The Rat Pack took those things and then took them back over to their boss. But one of the Rat Packs had grabbed Haley and took her to some kind of building where her and other kids went through different kinds of experiments. Now for Haley, she was able to escape, but then gets right over to the Thunderbolts to ask them for help. And so as we get into the 4th issue of this series, we see our heroes right now trying to help Haley out with this situation by taking her back over to a facility that she had escaped from. Now, for our heroes, they really have to now be heroes in front of her because if they do go out of their way to stop the people who had kidnapped her and used her for different kinds of experiments, they have to make sure that they are heroes in front of this young girl. She cannot find out that they are the Masters of Evil. And so when they do arrive at where she escaped from and come to find out that it's the castle that belongs to Doctor Doom. Now, at the moment, Doctor Doom is not around right now. Doctor Doom is in the Heroes Reborn reality with the Avengers and also the Fantastic Four. But it also means that somebody else most likely took over Doom's castle. And so this kind of leads into a few pages where you do see our heroes break into Doom's castle, but also kind of realize at first it seems like no one's home. But then all these different kind of creatures pop up. Now, once you do have our heroes being able to take down all these different creatures, you then have our heroes confront the person who is responsible for what's happening inside Doom Castle. And that would be Arnim Zola. And so this kind of leads into the second half of the storyline, really being more of us just seeing, Arm and Zola fight against the Thunderbolts. Now, he first appeared, I forgot what particular issue, but it was the late 1970s. But for Arm and Zola, he was a biochemist who did transfer his mind into a robot body. And so he loves the idea of kidnapping people and using those people for his different kinds of experiments. We also learn here that for Armin Zola, he had kidnapped kids who were actually close to Haley because they all had lost their parents thanks to Onslaught. And so as the battle goes on, she realized that one of the creatures they were fighting against is actually her friends who were combined together into some kind of goopy creature that our heroes had to go out of the way to officially defeat. Now, while the battle was going on, a live feed was playing back in New York. And so you had the public watching it. You also had the liaison, Dallas, who works with the mayor, also watching it as well. But the main reason why this live feed is so important because once you do have the Techno, one of the members of the Thunderbolts go out of his way to put up that live feed. Well, when you have Joel express her anger about the idea of losing her friends and being part of this new superhero team and also bringing down Arm and Zola, you have the public back in New York loving the idea of her helping out where help is actually needed. It's really great. But this issue does end on the note where you do have our heroes go back to New York, do their public announcement about the idea of Jolt or Haley officially joining the team, which also means that now for our heroes, quotation marks, they have to work even harder to make sure she never finds out that they are the masters of evil. But it's also the idea of them still continuing to play with the minds and hearts of the public, with them adding this young girl to their rosters. And so just like that, for the Thunderbolts, they now have a new team member. And so now we move on to issue number 5. Now, issue number 5 is really more of a Hydra storyline. Really, in the first few pages of this issue, they really do try their best to kind of hide the fact that it's going to be a Hydra storyline by having folks hide in the shadows or in the darkness in the room. But you can kind of tell in the background, like, yeah, this is going to be a Hydra storyline. But either way, the leader of this group right here is very upset about the idea of their New York operations not going well because of the Thunderbolts. And so he tells his guys to go ahead and release XF3. But when we do pick up with the Thunderbolts, it's now them just out in the city trying their best to enjoy the city. So they all go their separate ways for different things. And it's kind of cool because it's the Thunderbolts trying their best to still have normal lives, but also be heroes in disguise. I don't know why I like it so much, but either way, I want to shift our focus over to Haley. And the reason why, because even though we saw her in the last chapter officially join the team, it's the idea that she still has a lot to process. And so when it comes to Meteorite, she wants to make sure that Haley is okay because she lost her parents. She lost her friends. Like, she has gone through so much in a very short period of time. And so when you do have Meteorite kind of dive into the issues that Haley is going through, for Haley, she's very angry at the moment. And so when she does release that anger, she also releases a huge amount of energy, where of course it does get the attention of a lot of people around them. And so you did have Haley having no choice but to change into her superhero outfit, and the same goes for Meteorite, because luckily the public was not really paying that much attention of who Haley is or what she looks like without the mask. Now, for a brief moment, we also get reminded that when it comes to Atlas, he's trying his best to see if there is a chance for him to have a relationship with another character known as Dallas. Now, Dallas, again, is their mayor liaison, and it does seem like she is intriguing him as well. But when we do switch over to Meteorite and also Bolt, that is when they are confronted by the Growing Man. Now, the Growing Man is actually an android that was created by an alien race known as and guys, you know how I am, I might butcher some names, but an alien race known as the Cosmosians. And I really hope I pronounced that correctly. Now, the Cosmosians, they created the android for Kang the Conqueror, which basically means the future version of that alien human race had created the growing man, gave it to King the Conqueror. Now, the thing was, for the Cosmodians, they have put this device inside the android to alert their ancestors about the idea of King the Conqueror coming to them and having them creating this android. The thing was, that alert never did go off, and it will go off at the very end of this storyline. But with the growing man being here for Jolt, not Bolt, Bolt's a dog, Jolt, and also for Meteorite, they're kind of like, yo, what in the world is going on here? Now, Jolt knows about the growing man, the idea that every single time you hit it, it just gets bigger and bigger. Now, I do want to go ahead and shift over to, well, Techno, better known as Fixer. And the reason why, because it's him right now pretending to be himself again, right? But also having pokered out a few other characters that he's basically close to. Now, it's also him kind of hinting at the idea that he had to retire as the Fixer because of the Thunderbolts, but in reality, he's part of the actual team. But the guys hanging out with, they believe him at first, except when he does get a call from the rest of the team right now, needing his help to fight against the growing man, he has to leave. One of the guys follows him because he dropped some money he won at Poker Night and see him change his face into, well, his Techno appearance. And so you have that guy kind of wondering what in the world is going on with his friend. But this kind of leads into like the rest of the storyline where you do have the Thunderbolts begin to work together as a way to fight against the growing man. Now, as he gets bigger and bigger, of course, that gives Techno the chance to get inside of him. Now, while you do have the Thunderbolts fighting against Growing Man, their leader, better known as Citizen V, he is not there. And the reason why, because he's back at the base right now having a conversation with Dallas about the idea of getting access to the Avenger files. Now, with the kind of access right there for the Thunderbolts, especially for Baron Zemo, it will go a long way in their plan of evilness down the road. And so for Dallas, she has to call S.H.I.E.L.D. to get access to the S.H.I.E.L.D. files, the Avenger files about the growing man, find a way to defeat him. But back in the battle, as he gets bigger and bigger, you have Techno being able to go inside the actual android. Now, with him doing that, he finds that beacon and he activates it. And so with him doing that, you didn't have the growing man disappear and also defeat it. But now that beacon has warned the Cosmodians about the idea of what's going to happen to their world in the future when it comes to King the Conqueror. Like, just like that, it's all done. Now, for Citizen V, he was unable to get the access he wanted when it came to the Avengers file because S.H.I.E.L.D. said no to the idea of the team getting access to those files. But for Citizen V, because he's actually Baron Zemo, his connections to Hydra, the dude already knows where the growing man came from, and that would be Von Strucker. And so he calls up Von Strucker to basically warn him about the idea of leaving the team alone, because if not, then the Thunderbolts will come after him and try their best to shut down his operations involving the idea of Hydra. But now this leads us into the idea of getting into Thunderbolts Annual #1. And the reason why, because you didn't have Jolt begin to ask the question of the idea of the origin of the Thunderbolts. And technically, this is a good question to ask because when it came to our coverage over this particular team, all we know is that they had came together on idea to pretend to be heroes, to trick the world, believe they are heroes, to get whatever they needed for their evil things down the road. And so it's the idea of like, how did Baron Zemo go out of his way to recruit all these different characters as a team? But also at the same time, they can't tell Jolt the actual real origin story because she believes in reality that they are really a group of characters that came together to be heroes for an actual good purpose, but in reality, that's not the case. And so we are given a flashback. Now with this flashback, we begin to learn like how Baron Zemo was able to go out of his way to recruit the different people for this team. And so it all began the idea of Baron Zemo realizing that none of his plans are working out. And it got to the point where his life is just falling apart that he has to go into hiding. His wife is dying or dead in a prison at the moment. And so for Baron Zemo, he's kind of like, can this get even worse? And so you didn't have Baron Zemo say, you know what? How about this? I will look into different dimensions to see if I am able to bring in an army of soldiers, an army of creatures to use against the forces of good on this world so that I would then finally be able to rule over this world completely. Except while doing that, he's then contacted by Goliath. Now, when it comes to Goliath, or Atlas, he is technically stuck in a different dimension and being held as a prisoner by the cosmos. And we just talked about them in the last chapter. But when it came to, well, Baron Zemo, he realized he needs the help of somebody else to help him be able to bring Atlas back into this reality. And that all began with him going to meet up with the Fixer. Now, with the Fixer, the dude can make almost anything. And so for Baron Zemo, it's kind of the idea of like, listen, I need you to find a way to access that dimension because once you do, we got to bring our boy home. And so for the Fixer, he's down just like that. And so once you do have the two characters go back over to Baron Zemo's base, you did have Baron Zemo realize that he has begun the process of recruiting different people that made up the past version of the Masters of Evil. So why not go ahead and recruit other people to kind of complete the team? And so that began his adventure of going around and meeting different members of the team. And so the next person he goes to recruit is no other than Songbird. Now, for Songbird at this time, she was known as Screaming Mimi, but she also was hanging out with another character, and that would be, well, Angar. Now, for these two characters, we see at the moment they're trying to rob a bank. Now, they're able to get away, but you did have some police officers shoot at them. One of those bullets does hit Angar. And so we see Angar die in the arms of, well, Songbird. And for her, she is officially heartbroken because she loved that man so much, but unfortunately, he dies in her arms. And so with his death, she begins to scream. Now, her powers at first, were very similar to the powers of Banshee, but over the years, her powers have truly evolved in different ways. But you did have Baron Zemo find her, take her, and they leave, and also take the body of Angar as well. Now, the next person he does go out of his way to recruit is the Beetle. Now, in the present day, he's better known as Mach 1. But like Baron Zemo, when it comes to the Beetle, he was kind of like down on his luck at the moment. And so for the Beetle, he was kind of hoping that his next plan would work out. The problem is that the guy he's supposed to work with took the money and ran away. And so for the Beetle, he has to go out of his way to find the guy and get his money back. Now, while trying to do that, you didn't have the Beetle run into Daredevil, who was trying to protect the guy who basically cheated the Beetle. Now, you do have Beetle being able to get away from Daredevil, but just barely. But right after you didn't have the Beetle being able to get away from Daredevil, you didn't have the Beetle run into Baron Zemo. And so just like that, he was also recruited for this new version of the Masters of Evil. Now, once you did have Baron Zemo recruit most of the members to the team, that is when you had the idea of the Onslaught event happen. The idea that you had the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, supposedly give up their lives as a way to bring down Onslaught. And as you all know, in reality, those heroes were pushed into the Heroes Reborn reality. But for the public, they don't know that. They truly believe that they had officially lost their heroes. But for Baron Zemo, he's kind of upset because he wanted to be the one to kill off the heroes, not Onslaught, not anybody else. He thought he should be the one to kill off the Avengers. But you didn't have Baron Zemo begin to make a plan in his head with the idea of the heroes no longer being around. And so we do see Baron Zemo and also Fixer go out of their way to contact the Cosmosians as a way to bring Atlas back into this dimension. Now, with that being said, at first they're kind of like, no, he's stuck with us, but you didn't have them hand over Atlas. Now, once that's done right there, and you have Atlas go give his medical checkup done, you did have Atlas kind of hear about the idea of the Avengers and also the Fantastic Four no longer being around, kind of joking about the idea that maybe new people should apply to be heroes. And for Baron Zemo, he overhears that conversation, and that right there gives him the idea of turning Masters of Evil into the Thunderbolts. So this is where we kind of switch over to the vault. Now, the vault is the idea where you kind of keep different characters as prisoners, different bad guys as prisoners, one of many. But while you do have a breakout happen at the vault, you did have the Thunderbolts make their first official appearance in the world to stop these villains from being able to get away. Now, it's only Atlas, Citizen V, and also Songbird right now. The rest of the team are somewhere else. Matter of fact, they're right now sneaking away with Meteorite so that she can also officially join the team as well, but in more of a different kind of way. Because for her, she was a psychiatrist. And so with her being a psychiatrist, really does work out for us. And let me explain, because it's really more him saying, I need you to kind of guide the different members of this team emotions so that the plan can officially work out. Because with us now pretending to be heroes, sooner or later down the road, you're going to have different people, different governments wanting our help, opening doors for us to allow to take things from them. But we have to be perfect when it comes to this plan to work out. And so your goal is to help guide our emotions. And so just like that, we now officially know how Baron Zemo was able to get the Thunderbolts together. Now, of course, what we just saw right there, story told to us, is the official story. But when it comes to Baron Zemo, he left a lot of details out when it came to telling Jolt the origin to the Thunderbolts as a way to make sure that she never learns they are the masters of evil. And so you do have the book kind of end on that note, but it's Meteorites telling Citizen V or Baron Zemo, like, hey, listen, there are holes in your story. Sooner or later, she's going to figure things out. And when she does, your whole entire plan is going to fall apart. But for him, he believes there's no way it will fall apart because she is so starstruck. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.